Hi everyone, welcome to Poetry and Talk. If you're new to us, Poetry and Talk is a new online interviewing platform for poets to share their poetry, background, and inspiration. We want to wish everyone a happy new year. We hope 2021 is great for you. We have a new guest poet to introduce you to. Before we get into our guest poet and find out about his poetic journey, we just would like to thank all the poets that came aboard with us on 2020 last year. We currently have over 30 poet interviews for you to watch and be inspired by. We hope you'll stay connected with us on social media, on our Facebook page, Poetry and Talk, and our YouTube channel as well. Please subscribe, like, and share. We appreciate your support. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Poetry and Talk, and I'd like to welcome our guest poet for today, Daniel Smith. Daniel, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks for coming aboard with us.
Yeah. So we need a brief background or?
Sure. If you'd like to give us a little bit of a brief background, perhaps more on the poem that you're going to open up with,
Okay.
and go ahead and lead into the poem. And we're excited to find out about you and your poetic journey.
All right. Well, I wrote the poem I prepared for today was it's called Passing Shore Festival. It was based on a video I watched on YouTube about DMT experiences in the jungle, in the Amazon, actually. I just tried to capture really where this guy's head was with the transformation he was claiming to make. So that's what I tried to capture in this poem. So shall I share it?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So, Passing Shore Festival. Patting the earth down with their feet, a colorful look into the dimensions, while consciousness spins into inner fabric, into inner soul retreat. Fires poking into the air, glimpses of the future pass from face to place as offerings to the inner sanctuary where everything is held by something else in a familiar place. The black and white have mixed into a gray. The play is in the clay of reality where we shape things we cannot grasp. In a far up attic full of dust, they lay as moths to flames within the pleasant tragedy in which life has its way. We chase every day by waking from the dream, the eternal shining lake, where they glimmer in the murky depths of unknowing. There we reflect as something unbecoming itself, swimming deep under a universal dream that sheds its leaves to feed its feet. The falling is a vibrant display of death. Then things freeze, as if held by the seams the world fetches from turning, as space bites deep back into the fire of fleshly desires and its will to consume our passionate desires to see the world in bloom. The music plays louder as we dance to our doom. The only place we lived in is what is assumed. Thank you.
That's a really fascinating topic, Daniel. So basically, you were watching a video that related to experimenting with plant medicine with DMT?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then you were trying to, after you watched the video, get into like the headspace, as you said, what it would be like to actually experience this kind of altered higher state of consciousness.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you elaborate on why you were attracted to this? What this poem means to you? What are you getting at? What is this helping you and your evolution, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of it's almost philosophical in a way. I find. I don't know. I'm a horticulturalist by trade. I went to college for horticulture, and plants have always fascinated me. Just the way they interact with their bodies. So I guess that was kind of the passion behind this was just kind of creating the atmosphere for experiencing enlightenment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you talk about some interesting things. You talk about the inner sanctuary. You talk about clay, and that's so like kind of iconic and metaphoric and being molded into it. And you
Yep.
mentioned this place that's very familiar, but yet it's kind of like it's kind of out of reach in that we're not really in touch with it, but yet perhaps this plant medicine is bringing it on, and perhaps other ways. Elaborate a little bit more if you would, please.
Yeah. So yeah, like you mentioned, Leslie, um, you see, it's almost it's a reformation of yourself. So the clay is kind of reforming yourself, but yet it's in the inner sanctuary. And the sanctuary, I mentioned fire as well. Like it's the destroyer. It destroys the old to bring in the new. You know what I mean? It's like a rejuvenation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When did you write this, Daniel?
I wrote this. It must have been at least a month ago now, I think.
Okay, so pretty recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And why did you want to open up the show with this specific poem?
Well, honestly, it was from the affirmation of my friend that I shared a few with him, and I just kind of asked his opinion on which one I should share, and he picked this one. My roommate, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of went along with his guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
figured if he liked it, someone else might.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about what other subject matter, Daniel, you write about. You have an affinity for plants and horticulture, as you said, is your background.
Mhm.
So is this typical of other poems that you write about? Do you kind of shift around a little bit to other subject matter? What's important to you?
Yeah, I almost a lot of people, even me, find writing as kind of like a therapy, you know what I mean? So I tend to write about the deeper things in my life and try to put it into almost, I really like the form of imagism in poetry. It's like modern poetry. I like reading modern poetry, and just because there's no formality to it, you know what I mean? It's just free for thinking. It's sometimes you have to read it over and over again, but every time it just gets deeper and deeper, and it's almost like a dream state that you get into and imagining these things that are being portrayed in the poem.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were writing this poem yourself, Daniel, did you have a lot of imagery going on? Maybe not just with the movie per se, but just like within yourself to give you some of the ideas and inspiration for the poem?
Yeah, you see, I do. I kind of write and I flow. I don't really edit things very often. I know I could, but I used to do that when I started writing when I was 13. So quite young. I've been practicing for years. I'm 28 now, but yeah, I found the more I tried to edit my poems and um, basically modify them, the further and further they got away from the original kind of um, concept I was trying to go for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So this kind of ties into why you like more modern poetry. You don't like the formalities. You like it
Yeah.
somewhat unstructured because that's kind of a little bit more free thinking for you, a little bit more open and
Yeah.
expressive without limitations.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you kind of gravitate towards.
It is. It
Mm-hmm.
is. Yeah. I mean, there's a certain flow I find I have with my writing. I've honed it over the years of writing. It's changed. It's evolved, right? Like over the years. But I find the most difficult thing I can do is try to condense it. You know what I mean? Like they do in music. They condense things and make them flow better. Kind of fit in, I don't know, a 3-minute song, right? Um, but I don't.
Daniel, can you finish
Still
that
with me?
last part? can you finish that last part for us?
Oh, yeah. I think we're losing a connection here.
Yeah, it froze for a moment. Can you go ahead and finish what you were elaborating on?
Yeah. Yeah, just like trying to create a like almost an ecosystem of words, that kind of coalesce with each other, and really taking the reader or the listener on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like I try to write with intensity, and but also intensity and motive. You know what I mean?
And what would the motive be? Just other than the structure, because we kind of get a good feel that you kind of want to get to the point, and you kind of want to do it in a condensed way that you said, but you want it to have a great flow. You want it to have an intensity. And what is the motivation behind that, Daniel?
I guess the motivation is drawing you in, but not leaving you kind of at the same time leaving you in a mystery, right? But also making you process it in a way you understand yourself. Maybe not the way I would want to understand it, but multiple people could read this and interpret it different ways, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. So you want it to stay open so that the reader or the listener, the viewer, what have you, has their own interpretation of it. So you're not necessarily directing it, so to speak. You're offering yours, but you're saying, hey, you interpret it the way that you would like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have to ask you a question because I find it interesting. So your background with the plants, the horticulture is very specific. It's very detail oriented. Kind of has a science edge to it. And yet you like this very kind of like open, free thinking, free form kind of way. Is it interesting kind of balance? Do you perceive that as well? And you kind of feel like you just kind of, you have these areas and they just make up who Daniel is?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. You're right. Horticulture is quite structured. Yeah, I don't know. This is, writing is kind of like it's a hobby for me, right? Like I don't like to look at it as work as much as I like to look at it as a leisurely activity. Just an activity where I can get inside my head and just flow with some, an art form. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And when do you get inspiration to write, Daniel?
It comes and goes. I wish I could be more disciplined with it, because obviously the more you write, the better you get. I guess that's what a lot of people say. But yeah, sorry, I'm getting off topic. What was the question?
Well, let's move on as well. So you started to write poetry when you were 13.
Yes, yeah. Actually, I had been published. Actually, just in elementary school for a poem I wrote in a little collection of poems. I was published again when I was 18 in what was the book? It was an international poetry contest. I was actually a semi-finalist for it. I still got my book published, but unfortunately, I didn't have even enough for a postage stamp in order to send the paperwork back in order to qualify for the semifinals. It was for a poem called Nightingale. Um, yeah, and that was my first kind of bigger published poem. Um, then later on in college, I wrote another poem called The Pyro, and it was published through a Canadian publishing company that made a book called The Warbler Song, and I was featured in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So early on, you had some consecutive publications and some kind of focus on your poetry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so currently now, you said, Daniel, you consider it more to be a hobby and something where you just kind of want to have that like art form, expressive part of yourself, um,
Yeah,
released.
I like to draw people in. I like them to be fascinated. You know what I mean? I like them to have thought-provoking experiences and stuff. Yeah.
Mhm. From your poetry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when someone reads one of your poems, ideally for you, if someone walks away from reading some of your poems, you want it to be thought provoking. You want them to think about things, maybe expand their mind to some extent, to look at things maybe differently, to feel different things. That's correct.
Yeah, that's why I like to take a philosophical approach on my poems. Um, Not all of them, some of them though. I almost like to set a scene like a movie kind of, you know, like you're almost watching it as you're reading it. I like to do that with some of my poems, but some of them, I take inspiration from some of the bigger names out there in poetry, and just how the way they write so cryptically, but just the choice in words they use convey such an image in your mind that you almost can't. You're almost like stuck in it. You know what I mean?
Mhm. So the mystery and magic of the words and the way they're put together and
Yeah.
what's said and what isn't said is an element that you're very attracted to.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can really resonate with that. So share with us some other aspects of your poetry, Daniel, if you would please, that we haven't
Mhm.
touched upon, that's important to you.
Um. hmm, I guess even telling some of my own story in a way. I mean, telling some of my own life story involved with the poem, even if it's not solely about my life. Um, I you know I don't normally write about. Well, recently I have written a poem more or less about like politics or and just like the way the system is set up and corruption and stuff like that, right? Um, so I'm trying to take a more real approach on my poems lately, so that it appeals to a bigger audience. But I find I like sometimes when you head that way, you get more formal than you do kind of abstract, you know?
Mhm. Now, when you say real, Daniel, are you referring to real in terms of writing about current affairs?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Mhm.
yeah.
So maybe you're exploring this part that maybe have a little more formality to it and just kind of seeing if it's something that, you might want to just try just because it's something a little bit new.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, you know, um, I do run out of things to write about. Um, I sometimes, I don't know. Um, I have a book here called The Artist's Way, and I've read through some of it, but it seemed to be a pretty good tool for just never running into what they call writer's block, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, I do it for a hobby. I don't really do it to um, make any money or uh, anything like that.
Mhm. I'd like to ask you because the poem that you opened up with
Mhm.
experimenting, with higher states of consciousness and attributed, to plant medicine experimentation, and you
Mhm.
also have a draw you said to like the magic and the mystical aspects of poetry. So,
Yeah.
is this something that you personally, something that you want to experience, something that you actively pursue in all the different ways and tools that are available.
Um, you mean as far as experimenting with DMT?
Well, I didn't mean that specifically, but
Okay.
is this sort of a um, a way that Daniel can experience these parts of himself? Is that probably, or in your words, a connection? I mean, you're attracted to it. Is this something that you want to experience? You have experienced a way you look at how life can be? What, in your words, what is the connection to you?
Um, hmm. I mean, I've led a spiritual path. Um, I've experienced spiritual things. Um, higher states of consciousness and whatnot. Um, I guess the poem did mean something to me. Um, it, uh, it just reflected that inner need to uh, fill that void in which a lot of people, like, you're living a mundane life. You know what I mean? Like, it's to add substance to your existence, to add, uh, you know, I guess even more creativity, more insight, more like newer ideas, newer ways of thinking, um, because that's important for shaping the world too, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing that, because you're really
Or
kind of saying, hey, look deeper than the surface value and the mundane that that almost all of us, can get really caught up in. But you're like, say, hey, wait a minute, there's another reality going on here, and let me
Mhm.
help you kind of tap into it.
Yes.
Hmm. That's great. That's really beautiful. So do you feel like that's kind of like, at least in part, your message through your poetry, along with some of
Uh,
the other things that you've mentioned?
yeah, I would say for the most part. I mean, not entirely. I do write on subjects such as relationships or, um, love, um, but I try not to be too mainstream about it. You know what I mean? Uh, I try to I try to add substance to it. Different ways of looking at what romance is, or you know, ways of interpreting relationships.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, I love the unconventional orientation. I just think that's awesome. So talk to us about your poetry writing. How frequent do you write when you get inspired? Because as you mentioned, it's a hobby for you, but it's something that you enjoy as well. So tell us a little bit about how that plays out for you.
Um, I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's a hobby. Um, it, I mean, it fills the time. I mean, when I'm inspired, I don't always have the time to write down my thoughts, because life is busy. Like, you got to work, you got to make money and stuff, right? So, it's hard to write when you're truly inspired, because I could be sleeping, I could be in bed and an idea will come to me. Actually, I've been known to stay up almost all night, and every time I laid down, I would have a new thought. It would be a new part to the poem I wanted to write down. And these thoughts, oddly enough, usually always happen at night, when you're supposed to be settling down and going to sleep. But um, yeah, sometimes it can be hard to convey everything you think of, because you just you don't have a notepad, or you don't have the time to sit there and type it in your phone or something, right? I believe a lot of good stuff is lost that way. Um, but I mean, if I were a writer as a career, right? Um, you had to have the time to do this, because you focus more on your creativity, on your ideas, in order to make an income.
Hmm. Hmm. So when these bursts of inspiration, they happen at night, they happen at different times, but you're saying you don't journal them, you don't, like, quickly write them down or anything?
Yeah, I do. It's just I find I go through dry spells where I'm not being as living the poem. You know what I mean? I'm not living the atmosphere. I'm not living um, quite the way that would be. Um, it wouldn't um, it wouldn't bring forth these kind of ideas, right?
Right. So that kind of like headspace, that kind of those elements need to be present for you to write.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It definitely. It has to be. I have to be focused on it. Um, it's there's the odd time that you're daydreaming or whatever most of the day, and all of a sudden you come across this idea and you're like, wow, okay, I got to write that down, or I got to type that in my phone. Um, yeah, it's almost like you have to catch it. You know, you have to catch it and reel it in. Sometimes.
Mm-hmm. That's a great metaphor. I like that. You have to catch it and reel it in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tell us, I mean, just as far as the COVID situation goes and your writing, it sounds like you've been pretty busy. And so has there been much writing for you? Like, let's say, 2020 from March on?
Yeah. No, Leslie. There hasn't been a whole lot lately, just because just the place I'm at in life right now. I have to work as much as possible. Um, trying to pay bills and stuff, right? So I don't really have that free time to sit around and kind of get into the headspace of, okay, create, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, During this COVID, I don't find I'm more isolated. Um, just because I've never drawn Serb. Um, I've worked through the whole thing, right? Um, but I understand a lot of people that could take advantage of this time if they're laid off from their jobs, or they're stuck home, self isolating. They could take advantage of this time to try to get the wheels turning.
Mm-hmm. I want to get back a moment, Daniel, if you don't mind, to kind of looking at poetry as like a very magical, mystical um, kind of thing. Because as mentioned, I really relate to that, and I look at it as a bridge to kind of being able to bring that here. So, in your own way, can you give us like 3 tips on experiencing something magical, something mystical, something out of the ordinary, something that kind of breaks up the mundane, in basically a standard day? Like, what are 3 ways that you would advise us?
Well, I would say look at the little things around you, things other people don't notice, um, like something unique, that someone would just like take a glance at and be like, okay, whatever, it's it's deformed or it's broken, um, why would I try to study that, it's pointless. But you got to look at just like even the little pockets all around you that are hiding something unique, something valuable, um, something big. You never know where you're going to find that inspiration. I also found that a lot of study into what you're interested in is going to provoke you to analyze it and put your own thoughts into it. I like taking the time to watch a lot of YouTube or read um, different poems. I mean, I got books of poetry here that I draw some inspiration from as well. Um, and a third way I would say is even talking to a fellow poet, or just getting together for coffee, or maybe a beer or something, and just being like, okay, let's get creative. You know what I mean? Let's
Mhm.
just like bounce ideas off of each other until we come up with something that nobody's thought of yet.
Mhm. I love that whole progressive thinking, and those are some great ideas as well. Some great tips. So you're saying basically, look around.
Mhm.
That actually there is magic there. You just have to open your eyes and kind of see it and get kind of beneath the surface, and to be inspired by
Yeah.
books and videos, and as you said, you go on YouTube, and then also the
Yeah.
interaction with other poets, kind of like a collaborative conversation as well.
Mhm. I mean, even if they're not a poet, you can still draw inspiration from just people that, because everybody's so unique, right? Um, that you can always take something from one of their own stories, or a part of their personality, or or just find some kind of spark there. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Do you think that it's the poet's job, so to speak? I asked another poet, guest poet, this as well. I'm interested on your take. When I say job, I mean that loosely. But do you think that it's the job of the poet, per se, to kind of make things known that otherwise go unnoticed? Do you kind of feel like that is in part why they even write to some extent, even if they all write about different things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a mystery in poetry. Um, it's meant to just kind of lead your mind kind of through like nothingness, but it's sorted at the same time. You know what I mean? It you know, um, the inspiration can come from a lot of different things, and like you said, like it is kind of like magic. You're right. It's a way of conveying words. I mean, words are powerful. Words are vibration. Words speak to the world, right? I mean, we wouldn't be human if we couldn't talk, or communicate in some way, right? So yeah, definitely, the mystery there is, it's out there. It's just, nobody really knows what a mystery, you know, the answer to a mystery. So, you're not, that's why I try to stay away from formal stuff, right? Because when it's formal, it's talking about what it is, you know. But you can draw a lot of things from, um, factual stuff as well. I mean, you know, it's 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 a lot to explain.
Mhm.
I don't really know where to go with that.
Mhm.
Um, I'd say the magic is just in the way you perceive the world,
Mhm.
and to really show someone the magic, you have to be able to convey the way you see the world.
Mhm. Mhm. Daniel, we're going to need to get ready to wrap things up.
Okay.
What closing comments would you like to share? And if you can let us know how to stay connected with you on your social media links.
Okay. Yeah. I don't really have. I have Facebook. Actually, I do have a poetry group on my Facebook. Um, it's called Poets and Songwriters by Numbers. You can type that in, and it's a group on Facebook. Um, or Yeah, I don't really have many social platforms for my writing. I did have Twitter. Um, I can't tell you. I haven't used it in so long, right? Um, yeah, I guess. Yeah, just that group on Facebook. That's a way to connect with me. Or if you know where I live and you want to add me as a friend on Facebook. Yeah, sure.
Mhm. Oh, okay, very good. I really have enjoyed this conversation and kind of breaking through those boundaries and really perceiving correctly, and these whole like higher states of consciousness discussion has been great. So I'd like to thank you for being our guest poet for today, Daniel.
Yes, thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. Were there any other closing comments that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I guess just everybody stay safe, and you know, if you have the free time, and I mean, really try to hone your craft. You know what I mean? Use that as an opportunity to build build a beautiful atmosphere, and that can be in your head as well. You know, and share it with other people, and you know, just build a network. It can all be done online as well, too, right? As you know, just like we're doing right now.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for being our guest poet.
Yes, of course, Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching Poetry and Talk. Again, wishing you a happy new year, 2021. Hoping it's great for all of us. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support. Thank you again, Daniel, for being our guest poet. And we'll talk soon on the next Poetry and Talk. Until then, be well and be blessed.